Welcome to the Harkening Deer podcast. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give a star rating, and write a review on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast. Don't forget to check out the new rewards for Patreon subscribers at patreon.com/harkeningdeer. The link is also in the show notes. Let's begin with our FARMS, an acronym for Facilitation of Accommodating Recommendations for Meditation. Farm number 1, no judgment. There is no wrong way to meditate. In the immortal words of Winnie the Pooh, doing nothing often leads to the very best something. This is the essence of meditation. So no shame, no self-judgment. Farm number 2, be still in mind, body, and spirit. Be encouraged to close your eyes and position yourself in a comfortable manner you can remain in for the duration of the meditation. Be still. Farm number 3, embrace a heart and mindset of peace and loving kindness. As we continue our Love All Things series, let us revisit the 2 greatest commandments. In Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 to 40, in the New Living Translation, Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these 2 commandments. In a later chapter, Jesus goes on to say, "For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me. I tell you the truth, when you did this for the least of my brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me." When you did this for the least of my brothers and sisters, you were doing it for me. as yourself. Love your neighbor. Jesus tells us the two greatest commandments are to love God and love one another. And then he tells us to show love to one another is to show love to God. It could be interpreted that Jesus essentially tells us that the two greatest commandments are love your neighbor and love your neighbor. One of the best ways, if not the best way, to love God is to love one another. And the Apostle Paul reminds us in his letter to the Galatians, the whole law can be summed up in this one commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. The best way to love God is to love one another. Love your neighbor.